Lorcan, if the land could speak, what do you think it would say to humans and how we live today?
Well, the land's been here a long time, hasn't it?
Mm.
It's been here before humans. So it might tell us a story of when the first humans just stood on the land.
Mm.
It's a long, long time ago.
Yes.
You'd have to wonder how long the land's memory is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I wonder how far humans go back.
well, that's another thing because I suppose if you get a bit technical about it, to go back before there was a human species,
Right.
the DNA, the chain, the water, information. Some people might struggle with that, but we didn't just arrive with a bang.
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
Humans go all the way back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
Mm.
So, Lorcan, I'm going to O'Toohill in Irish, yeah.
Yeah.
You spent years at the intersection of land, wildlife, and other indigenous ways of seeing. Lorcan spearheaded in reintroducing the golden eagles back into Ireland in Glenveagh National Park, Donegal, in 2001, after they'd went extinct in the 1920s.
Yes.
You're the author of Course Gill, and I could be saying that wrong.
That's correct.
Yeah, my Irish wouldn't be the best, which is also known as Crane Notions in English, which dips into myth, archaeology, and language in Irish history. And Lorcan, you're passionate about indigenous ways, how the landscape is alive, how it has meaning and shapes identity, how older beliefs were grounded in nature and being, and you're keen on challenging narratives, information, and reviving what got lost in our story through language, myth, ancient sites, and suppressed history. I'd like to welcome you today, Lorcan, and for anyone listening, if you can please press subscribe, it's greatly appreciated. Lorcan, how are you?
Good. I suppose I've become interested in indigenous ways. I might have used other words a few years ago, but I just get the sense that native people close to the land, are probably the same across all the continents, and they probably share a lot more in common than we think. Ireland has had a very mixed history, hasn't it, over thousands of years, and maybe in recent hundreds of years we've been told A, B, and C. Not all of those stories are true. I'm not saying that the old stories were any better, but I think it's time now to kind of have a more honest discussion about it and see if there is anything we can learn from forgotten stories and ways and practices that were suppressed for different ideological or social or political reasons.
What is it about the land that's so important in the sense of like being connected? Like, what does it mean to be connected to the land?
Well, you could answer that question in two ways. Like maybe today it's less important to people if you're living in a town or a city or a high-rise apartment or a block. But if you're living in a rural area, I'm living in a rural area where I'm not farming, so maybe it's slightly less important to me. If I was a farmer, you're under so much pressure to take from the land. And from what I gather, and stand to be corrected, but speaking to older farmers around County Donegal during the Golden Eagle project, they would have said when they were growing up in the 50s and 60s that their farms would have been a mixed enterprise. They'd have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, they'd grow this and that and the other. And then we joined the EEC, the European Union now, and they were kind of gradually forced into becoming a sheep farmer or a dry stock farmer, or a dairy farmer, or an arable farmer. And they lost that mixture and that wisdom that they'd all grown up with, because they would have known how to plant oats, where to plant oats, which field was best for this, which field was best for that. And I'd hear some of the local guys up in the local pub slagging someone, oh, you ploughed that field too deep and you've brought up a bit of the marl. And those things have been lost. So that connection with the land is very important. Maybe it's a throwaway remark of someone simple like me, but I seen a panorama program a few years ago, and it was about Britain, urban Britain, and so many children were sick, and they found a lot of the sickness in children was because they didn't have the bacteria in their stomach. They didn't go out in the clay and get dirt in their fingernails and get those bacteria from the soil. They were living in a sanitized environment, everything was spotless. So that connection with the land, I think we kind of come to the stage now we take it for granted.
Mm. But you say like someone living in a high rise, which is probably the most extreme someone could live on Earth without being connected. But I think everyone is somewhat connected because the food that you eat, where's the food coming from? Is that coming from maybe a factory, or is it coming from a land? So there is kind of like a knock-on effect.
I agree entirely, Ryan. I have a brother who he's a retired teacher, and he was asking kids one day, where ham comes from. And some of the kids were kind of saying it comes from the shop. They didn't know where ham came. They don't know where cheese comes from. And as you said yourself, food, but even water. Where does water come from? Like, water isn't made in a factory. And maybe we were programmed to take the simple things for granted and think we're all going to find something special out there. But if we come back, it's simple things like you get energy from food. And where does that food get its energy from? That food is either a plant or an animal. And that depends on water and light. It's very simple stuff. And maybe you ever hear Native Americans talking, parts of modern America now, and they'll talk simple stuff, and you say, oh yeah, but I know that. But you don't really know because you don't think about it. I asked a professor of zoology before Christmas, I said, do you teach your students that they are actually nature? He kind of hemmed and hawed, and I wasn't speaking to him, this is done over the phone, and he hemmed and hawed, and he says, well, they kind of know that from secondary school. And I said, you're teaching zoology, maybe a refresher course. We are nature, we're on that same tree of life, and it's almost an embarrassment to say we're part of that tree of life. And there was a bit of fuss recently in America, wasn't there, about a couple being compared to apes. And we should know about that because in the 19th century, there was a few drawings in Britain when Irish were depicted as apes. And we see that as a great shame. Maybe that was a level of intelligence that we knew we were from the tree of life. There's scientific circles, there's huge veneration for Darwin. He understood evolution, and that's a very intelligent man. Maybe some of the old Irish understood evolution as well, and they were mocked for it because people in Britain didn't have a clue about it at that time.
Yeah, you do like to challenge narratives, right?
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Like, what was it that inspired you to say, okay, I want to think different?
Well, I suppose could have come. I haven't asked myself that question. My family, I was born in Dublin. I'm the youngest of 8. All my older brothers and sisters were born in the Aran Islands. My dad would always say, in Ireland there has to be a little bit independent. They couldn't wait for someone to come out. They'd have to do it themselves. But maybe in even trying to get the Eagle project off the ground, I was going to people who were better placed than me to do it, and they had the tools to do it, and there was a knockback and a knockback, and it ended up kind of, well, you have to kind of do it yourself. I was working in Scotland where they were doing this stuff. I'd served my apprenticeship in Scotland. I just worked with birds, at birds.
Yes.
So I worked for the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds for about 10 years in the Highlands. So it's not rocket science, but it's not many people do it. But then coming back here, asking the better placed wildlife people, could they take this on? And that's why I came back to Glenveagh. The manager in Glenveagh was very keen to do it. I was coming back to help him do it. He got a transfer. And then the National Parks, Dukas as it was called at the time, decided not to do it. So we set up a small charity, the Golden Eagle Trust. I left the Wildlife Ranger Corps and joined that charity, and we did it. So it's not necessarily, I'm not being contrarian, but over time you ask a question, and if you don't get a right answer, why is this blockage? Why is this mental block? Why do we deviate? Face a straight question, face on. If we don't know, I think there's a huge reluctance amongst wildlife people, scientists, maybe most parts of society to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
There almost seems to be a shame in saying I don't know.
And what was it about the Golden Eagles, and why say them and why Donegal?
Good question. There could have been any number of birds. I suppose the motivation for the Golden Eagles came from Glenveagh itself. I was working at the time with red kites in Scotland. It would have been much easier for me to go to Wicklow with red kites, and they had reintroduced white-tailed eagles in Scotland at that time. But Dr. Kieran O'Keefe, who was in Glenveagh, he was quite interested in bringing the Golden Eagles back to Glenveagh. and I had worked on a golden eagle survey over there. I knew people in my line of work in Scotland who could help out. So it wasn't totally out of the blue. It just kind of fell into place. And after we brought in the golden eagles, we brought in the white-tailed eagles and the red kites. So the white-tailed eagles were brought into Kerry and the red kites were brought into Wicklow. And they were collaborative projects with the national parks.
How big are them birds?
Well, the golden eagle will be about 6 foot wide. The
Jesus.
white-tailed eagle will be about 7 foot wide.
Full span, like
full wingspan, yeah. So they're very striking. And maybe over time, it was the big birds that became extinct in Ireland. Birds like capra. It's probably easier to shoot, or maybe it had more impression in the past, more totemic maybe. But that's not to say that they're more important than the robin or the wren or the blackbird.
Mm-hmm.
But they were missing.
Yeah. Now, in terms of bringing them back into an ecosystem that hasn't had them for nearly 100 years, what's like the impact in terms of biodiversity, or does it change the food chain, or is there a balance in food and prey?
We'd presume there is. We did ask one or two universities to actually study this at the time, but there was a hesitancy within the Irish birding community. We're going back now to the late 1990s to get involved. They felt it wasn't appropriate. To be very blunt, they felt maybe I wasn't qualified. I didn't have a degree, and the focus at that stage was maybe on seabirds and waders and wetlands, and maybe the people working here. It's kind of human, if you know what I'm going to say. They weren't familiar with golden eagles because they weren't here, so maybe they had a slight absence of connectivity, or maybe they weren't comfortable dealing with a species that, what do we know about golden eagles? So I wouldn't say that I did it on my own. I was dealing with a lot of eagle experts in Scotland. I learned over time. But I suppose the impact, it's difficult. You'd suspect that they would suppress other middle predators like crows and foxes and competing animals that fill that gap. A lot of people would cite, for example, Yellowstone, where they brought in wolves and they suppressed the deer, and then the trees started to grow. So people didn't quite anticipate that bringing wolves back would make trees grow. With the golden eagles, I don't think I could answer that factually. I suspect that they've kind of, in some areas, have suppressed crow numbers and fox numbers. But probably more importantly, apart from the food chain, is that they've drawn attention to the mountains, and that we need to protect the mountains and not just think that they'll be okay on their own.
Yeah, what do you mean, sorry, when protect the mountains?
Well, some people might go to Glenveagh and say, oh, they're beautiful, they're very stark and rugged. But if you're a wildlife person, they're very naked. It should be a lot different.
Yeah.
I think people would I think people would be quite interested. The lady or the woman or the man or the boy on the street would be curious to know that Glenveagh used to be a temperate rainforest. It used to be covered in trees. Very hard to imagine.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. So if you're driving, for example, from Kilmacrennan to Errigal, and you're looking and you see all the horizons, and there might be a nice sunset, there might be a nice snowfall, whatever, you really should be driving through a temperate rainforest. If it's a pure wildlife area. Now, I don't think we're going back to that temperate rainforest. That's a long time ago. And the dates vary. But, 7, 8, 9,000 years ago, it would have been like that. But nonetheless, it would be nice to see patches of trees in that landscape that aren't there now.
Would the land support that?
I think
like
it would,
the soil, and there's enough for a forest there.
I think you'd be surprised at how much things can recover.
Yeah.
I'm no woodland expert.
Yeah.
Dear friend of mine, Andrew St. Ledger, was telling me that some of the mistakes that woodland people made was that they were putting oak trees into acidic peatlands, and that was the wrong tree to put in at the start. He said if they put in birch trees and gave the birch trees 10 or 15 years, they'd change the peat soil slightly, and then you could put in your oaks. So, we invited people over from Norway to a conference on kind of resilient landscapes. This is 15 years ago, and they showed a picture in Norway in the 1960s. It was just a bare slab of rock behind the village. It was by chance this picture was taken. It was a scenic picture of the village, bare slab of rock. And then that big slope slab of rock was bought by a wildlife group, and they fenced it off. And 60 years later, you couldn't see the rock. Because, you know, like a garden path, the moss might come in on the edge, and eventually your path is lost. Then you get trees on it. And over time, that bare slab of rock had become forest. And that's the type of change that can happen. So in terms of woodland, grazing is a big impact. So you can change the landscape, and we've changed. I don't think we realise how much we've changed the landscape ourselves. I'm not talking about me or you, but our ancestors.
Yeah, and that's, I assume, people like our ancestors coming in, chopping down the rainforest. Like, so would that a forest, Glenveagh, that was all chopped down?
We presume, and I'd have to plead ignorance. Was it chopped down? Were they taking sap out of the trees for particular reasons? Were there other uses? Were they ring barking it? They could just, you know, if you ring bark it, you'll kill a tree. Pass, I don't know.
So this is just a theory?
Well, the trees have
but
died,
I mean that
but
they were
I don't
cut.
know exactly how. I find it hard to think that they were chopping it down. They often say, they were chopping it down for charcoal to make molten products, bronze or copper or whatever. I can't see.
What time?
This, like, we're talking, for example, an elm tree, the pollen that they found in bogland cores across northwestern Europe dropped dramatically between 4,300 and 3,300 BCE, so, you know, BC. So that's 7-ish thousand years. That's not every species now. So something's going on there, and they can't quite understand what that is. They say, it might be climate change. It might, yeah. It might be humans trying to take leaves for cattle. It might. And then they said it might be elm beetle. But I think they were taking sap out of those trees and draining them. And over time...
Sorry, no, excuse me, but what's sap?
Sap is, you know, if you cut a natural tree or branch, you see the tree rings?
Yes.
The sap is in those rings. So you might see it. They still do it. And
how do you extract that?
You know, if you take maple syrup,
right.
In Canada, they just put a little plug hole into a maple tree and it drips out.
It drips out?
Yeah.
Okay.
They still do that in Spain. They'll take resin out of pine trees.
So I didn't know that's where, believe it or not. Yeah, okay.
Maple syrup comes from the sap of maple trees. And it's just harvested. And like you'll see, I haven't seen it.
It's like cutting into the vein of the tree.
Basically, you're bleeding it. You're bleeding part of it. You're not bleeding all of it.
But if you bleed it enough,
you could just weaken it. And,
okay.
But there could be other reasons. If you chop a pine tree, it won't grow back. But if you cut or chop down a deciduous tree, like an oak tree or a birch tree, even if you drop the trunk, the wee suckers, the sprouts will come out again, so it'll regrow. But this woodland lore, I think, has been lost as well. Woodland people were considered a little bit ignorant and savage, weren't they? Some woodcuts from around the time of the Elizabethan era, and they were talking about the wood cairn, these wild Irish tribes, ladies and men wandering about the woods. You know, they were just totally savage. But that's perspective that may or may not be true. I doubt it's true. But
okay, what do you feel is true?
I don't know if I was to answer that. I'd say that I'm recognising my own ignorance.
Most likely for you.
I think there was a lot more intelligence in Ireland, and it was dispersed over time. There's a lot of names, Gaelic names, that I think are misrepresented. You know, we're kind of at a loss as to what our ancestors thought. And there's little bits of the jigsaw kind of coming to the surface now, and I think in time we'll start to, even if we get the 4 corner pieces and then do the edge, I think over time we'll fill it in. For example, and this is different universities across Europe, so it's not an Irish boast. And they said that the Irish manuscripts, we only have about 10% of them left. That's 300 manuscripts. That means there used to be 3,000 Gaelic manuscripts, and we've lost 90% of them. If we had those 90% of manuscripts, I think we'd know a lot more. We'd answer those types of questions.
And how far do they go back?
Well, I suppose ink-wise, they probably go back to about the 5th, maybe the 6th century, 1,500 years, 1,600 years. And then in terms of language, you know, there's a lot of, I would suspect, unknowns about the Gaelic language. I was told at school, I presume most people are told at school, that St. Patrick brought literacy to this country, this island. I don't think so. I think it was here already. We're told that the Gaelic language...
What year was St. Patrick again?
432.
432.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't hear that before, but that doesn't feel... That's not what I ever thought.
Yeah.
I feel like it's here a lot longer. Sorry, continue. Yeah.
No, but that's... Well, maybe it's different schooling, you know.
Yeah.
And that could be my overstatement. But then even the Gaelic language, some people say, well, it came here with these people, the Celts from France or from Switzerland, Hallstatt and Latin. They were very good artistic miners of iron. But again, that's beginning. There's a lot of different linguists across the world now really questioning that, and they're saying that Gaelic is probably older than Greek and Latin. It's funny. It's a lot to do with perspective and where you sit. And if I was sitting over there, I might think.
Yeah, but I'm curious to hear what your
Yeah.
perspective is. You know,
Yeah.
where does it all go back to you? Or how far do you go back in your version or your history? You know.
Well, reading people, like I think a debate where I would say I don't know. There's a guy, he's passed away now, a linguist, Professor Veneman, and he reckons that the Irish language, the Welsh language, the Scottish Gaelic language goes back as far as the Neolithic. Now, Neolithic is a term, right?
Which
Age.
period is that again?
This is kind of before the Bronze Age. So
okay,
the time,
Stone Age.
Yeah, basically, more or less.
When that is
the megalith, when the new Grange was built, so that's about 3,200. Again, it's gone back to that kind of after that Elam era, but it's about, 5,000 years ago, 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. People didn't have metal weapons. They might have had stone weapons. That's debatable. But he said he thinks that the Gaelic, the native languages of these islands went back to that era. And then there's another professor over in America, and he says, no. It's because they're debating the fact that Gaelic starts a sentence with a verb. Chuoi me go dtí an siopa means I went to the shop. But in English, I'm putting the I at the start. The went is over here. But in Gaelic, you put the went. The verb's at the start of the sentence. It sounds like nothing, but it's very important in terms of language because putting the verb at the start is an African language. And I wonder, some people, we don't want to speak a language spoken by dark people, you know. Was there a bit of that kind of white supremacy going on in the 19th century, the 20th century? I don't know. But I think there's a lot of linkages with this island, with Africa and Native America. It's kind of, it's known, but it's not discussed. Like going back to Newgrange, the DNA from the bones in Newgrange is from dark-skinned people with blue eyes. And again, in
this is confirmed.
This is confirmed by very respected geneticists in Trinity College.
And what period?
We're talking about bones. I haven't read the paper back to front, but we're talking about bones recovered from that era, which is 3,200 BCE.
Okay,
I don't know how long the bones were in Newgrange, whether they placed there afterward or beforehand.
So at least 5,000 years.
Yeah, and some of those DNA samples had connectivity with Sligo, Carol Moore and Carol Keel. So to begin to piece this together, and this is published like in what they call peer-reviewed paper. So that's pretty well scrutinised. It doesn't get published in peer-reviewed papers unless it's factual to a degree. So it's those kind of aspects of our past. And if I'm speaking about Gaelic, I don't think anyone should presume I'm speaking about white Gaelic or 400-year-old Gaelic or 1,000-year-old Gaelic. I think Gaelic as a language, as a sound, does go back. And
so you see it more than just Ireland? You see it like as a European thing or even as an African thing?
Well, it may have had African roots, but I think it is connected to Scotland and probably Wales and probably parts of England before the Romans came into England.
Well, I assume that we are somewhat, the Scottish Gaelic and the Irish Gaelic, they're kind of a branch of the same.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, they are, yeah. And it's funny, there was a word that the Lowland Scots used to call the Highland Gaelic, and it's the same as the Irish Gaelic, if we use those words. And it was Irsa, I-R-S-E. And it was a kind of, that's curious, we're talking about Irish and maybe Irsa, if you split it up, I think what happened was that the languages were very simple words at the start. Maybe just every word had 2 letters. And then you stick the 2 letters together, and over time they'd shape. And that happens with all languages. And I think we've been given a story that suits the narrative of the last 400 or 500 years. We were simple folk. We didn't know much. The good people from Europe came over and told us how to live better lives, and we should be very grateful to them. And I'm not sure that's
And when you say
true.
the good people,
Well, the rich people, the powerful people.
what period and what was the name of them people at that time?
Well, it probably varies, doesn't it? I suppose like the Normans came here. They would say they were invited. I'm not sure, and I'm not anti-Norman. They came. It was curious when they did come, because they said that the Pope, the only English Norman Pope, invited them over or suggested they should come over in 1155. The Normans come over about, was it 1169 AD? So, we're talking about 900 years, 800 years ago. And they got all the Gaelic chiefs and maybe the spiritual leaders into Dublin Castle, and they said, now you have to swear allegiance to Rome and pay taxes to Rome, which suggests that they weren't looking to Rome at that stage. So, we're told with different institutions and different bodies a story that suits themselves. I would do that if I'm talking about wildlife. I'm going to tell the best wildlife story. I'm not going to say, oh, this bit of wildlife is bad, that bit of wildlife is bad, this is going to cause you trouble. We all do that. If you believe in something strongly enough, you'll what's the phrase? Gild the lily. You'll dress it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe now, as we're getting a bit smarter, we just need the untarnished truth.
Yeah.
And the truth, I don't think will sink anybody, but we might all learn from it.
Yeah. What do you feel the truth is?
I think that there was an intelligence here that was scattered, and it probably believed in that we're all the same, and it was. It's hard dancing around words. They had a belief that we're all one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think their belief was probably to celebrate life.
You believe that they had a belief that they're all one? I've heard that, and I feel correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like the pagans. Is that no?
See, yeah, pagans is one word, but you see, if you use the word pagan, that has so much baggage, doesn't it?
No, well, it depends on how you look at it.
It
yes.
depends who's asking.
Yeah, I mean, I just see it as a group of people who lived here before Christianity was brought in, and because they had the Druids, and they were all ones.
Yeah, and I think it's they're still here, aren't they? There's people you'll meet out there that will believe in this, and the oneness. It's hard to frame it, but they might have felt that there was one cloud around the world, and the cloud was our kind of mother womb, our water womb, Mother Nature. There's all different labels everywhere, but existence. We go back to the start of the conversation. We all have to drink water. We all eat food. Where's that food coming from? It's coming from the oneness. And then some people, maybe proud males, they say, oh, I have to find out exactly what the oneness is. Is it this number? Is it physics? Is it biology? Is it chemistry? And after a while, you just forget, actually, okay, it's really interesting knowing that. But come back to where it's all about. There's aspects of the oneness that are like a flower. A flower has so many petals. There's no petal is better than the other, but they're all coming back to the center.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be horrible if everyone on the planet was the same.
Mm-hmm.
For all, I don't know, put all the skin colors in together, mix it, and we didn't have different tastes in music or whatever. We are a flowering, a branch, a blossoming of that life force, but we're only part of it because there's other species. And you listen to some people today, and you've heard them in recent months. They're pretty famous in the media, and it's as if they don't need other aspects of life. That they can just live because it's their name and they've loads of money in the bank. Like, how long will money in the bank last you if you've no life around you, no water? So there's a psychology, is there, that we're trying to get away from the fact that we are life. But by admitting we are life, you have to kind of say, well, that's life. And then you say, I don't like that person. They're life as well, and I'm the same as them. And, I'm sure the people on this island, whatever race they were, made all the same mistakes that we're making today. And I'm sure at some stage they were bad, I'm sure at some stage they were good, and I'm sure at some stage they woke up in the morning after doing something, maybe killing lots of people, and said, why did I do that? And they learned. So it's not a glorious past. I'd say it's a real struggle. But I suspect that they're, and it doesn't necessarily, and this is the big thing again, doesn't necessarily mean that it came from here. I think they were interconnecting with people across the world. So the story of oneness of life could have come from South America, it could have come from the Aborigines, it could have come from any tribe in Africa. It could have came from Suffolk or Belgium. I don't know where it came from, but it did seem to grow legs. And there's hints of it in some of the words in Gaelic, but I think there was an acceptance that the one spirit, the native people, the indigenous people would say the great spirit, or the one spirit, or the one force. Some people might say life force, or it's very hard to describe. And if you say one word, some people will reject it, but they might, a similar word they might accept. But it's that oneness. And I suppose what we're seeing in the media now is it's very easy to say they're other. So you can bomb them because they're other. They're not us. That's trying to paint people as though they're not human, they're not life. And we've seen that really strongly in the media, haven't we? Those people, well, they got bombed and those kids were bombed, but that doesn't really matter. They're not the same as us. If you get to the bottom of oneness, that's just, it doesn't wash.
Yeah, so is that something that you've always embodied recently, or the oneness? I think it's a lot. It can be difficult for people to comprehend, I think.
I think it is very difficult, yeah.
I suppose I didn't really understand what oneness was until a few years ago, but yeah, you're oneness, you're one, but also you're both. Do you know what I mean? You are all one.
Yeah.
But then you're separate.
Yes,
yeah, so you're both at the same time, but it's living with both, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think there's even I look at some of the letters now in Gaelic, and I'm trying to guess them, and it's not even worth thinking about what my guesses are, but I think it'll come back in time. And I think that the S was for mixing, and the N was for individual or individuated. So, and I think that might have come from in nature, whether you're a tree with pollen, whether you're a fish, a male and female fish, whether you're a human, you need mixing of the female and the male for that generation to live forward. Hey, look, some people will start giving all kinds of labels and looking down on reproduction. There's all kinds of connotations with it. But with that mixing, and that mixing occurs in a pool of water. It's a feminine pool of water, whether it's the cloud or a female mother. And then you come to the N, which is an individual, which is a very unique thing. You get these two parts, they go through this water, and they come out as a single. And that's kind of a miracle in itself. And we have to be proud of that we are this unique aspect of the completeness. So you're right, and some people will be told, well, you have to wear those colour shoes, or you have to wear your hair this way. That's just, you have to, over time, as children, you might have been told to do A, B, and C, not to listen to this. And then over time, you try A, B, and C, and you kind of settle down. And I'd imagine it's very difficult now for teenagers and youths trying to decide where they want to go. There's a lot of the pressure now is kind of financial pressure. Wear this clothes and be cool, and this clothes will cost you 50, 100 euros extra. Or live in this area, it's more trendy than this area. Like here, we like to own a house. I know in Europe a lot of people wouldn't own a house, but it would be great if we all could own houses, but it doesn't make any sense. We let the big people with money own the houses. And so there's a lot of pressure that I don't think people in the 80s and 90s grew up with. So I'd be very reluctant to tell someone now how to live because my experience is so different. But they are unique people, all those teenagers and 20-year-olds now, and they have to navigate and find their own way to be themselves inside the oneness.
Yeah, there's definitely that pressures like social status and all too, you know.
Yeah.
But something I want to touch on too was why is, say, the language. If you lose the language, I don't know if I talked to you about that. Do you lose the connection to the land, or is there a disconnect there? Is that something I'm not sure if we discussed? But losing the language is like losing the connection to the land or the connection to our past.
Yeah.
No,
I think so. I haven't read a book, but I've read about a book by a guy, Rob McFarlane, and he wrote a book about Scottish Gaelic place names, and he was basically suggesting that a lot of the old-fashioned words that were going out of fashion, but were being pushed out of dictionaries, and he said it was a great shame because they had a unique way of looking at the landscape. Apparently, he has a book now, Is a River Alive? Again, I'm not hearing this secondhand. But going back to what you're saying about words and their importance for the landscape, I don't think we fully understand the richness of Gaelic yet.
the richness.
Yeah, I think we're kind of looking at words and say, oh, they may have come in from the continent 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. But I think they're built up here, and they're kind of built upon two-letter words that were very close to this indigenous worldview. It's going to be simple. I think they had about 4 vowels, which were ingredients of life: time, spirit, water, and breath.
That's the vowels,
Yeah.
and not letters.
They are vowels, they are letters, you know what I mean? So that would be, I think we start with spirit, or energy would be I, time would be O,
Yes.
water would be U, and breath would be A. And then they had consonants in pairs, so you receive and you give out, you grow and maybe you die or you take root. You mix and you individuate, and you hold in and you release. Very kind of simple. How does the life work? And then you put the constants of life, not consonants, but constants, those letters, with the vowels, and you have something like release. There's a flow of energy or flow of spirit. Anyway, that's a kind of a simple language, and I don't think people can get into phonetic language and start off with 6 letters. It's just too much of a jump. You know, in primary school, in play school, or what we say, baby infants, you don't teach a 4-year-old a 6-letter word. You might say an, or you have to start with a and c, and then and we all remember maybe a kind of loose memory of cat or dog. It has to be simple. And I think society and linguistically, it had to be simple, and we added together. Maybe we lost something in that richness. But come back to words again. There's a guy, what's his name, Professor Noam Chomsky over in America, and he's saying that words are kind of the hooks that your brain uses. So I'm looking here and I see light. Now, I couldn't use the word light unless it's in my diction. So if I come out of the outer planet and I didn't have words, you know, so words do connect how you see things. And some people will go or hear the song, and in some person's mind it'll be, that's beautiful. In another person's mind, it's crap. You know, and it's the words, obviously the feelings there, but you have to drag down words. So in terms of the landscape, how we see the landscape is, words are very close to that. Obviously education, and if your mom or dad or your granny told you spider's nice, let's have a look at the spider, and have a look at the web and see the eggs, that's cool. And then your granddad or someone at school or a teacher say, oh, spider, and they stand it and wipe it away. You know, and it's those experiences that you're told what's good and bad early on. And maybe, you know, I think there's probably, and you'll see a lot more of it now, young children being taken out into nature and thought, well, this is a flower. This opens up during the day and it closes at night. Or this is a ladybird, and the ladybird's able to fly and it eats these little insects. And, you know, it's that connectivity, and they'll say, wow, this landscape really is exciting, instead of, this is just somewhere I live. I sleep here and then I go in and have fun in town. So, yeah, words are very important. And I think place names are very important as well. That kind of tells you what people were thinking when they stamped those words on top of the landscape.
Okay. In terms of the indigenous people then? Like, do you have any insight to what their life may have been like, their beliefs, their way of being? I know we briefly touched on it, like the spirit, the water, the way they looked at the womb, but is there anything else that you feel hasn't been spoken about or is worth, hearing about?
I don't really know enough about it. I looked at some people. There was an archaeologist, Maria Gambutas, and she has done huge studies on kind of the old Neolithic, Mesolithic ideas in Europe, and there's no paperwork there, so there's no tape recorders. You're guessing what their point of view was. The lifestyle would have been simpler. She was suggesting it was much richer. There was no signs of kind of defense or weaponry. If they met people, they'd have the crack or whatever that might be.
It's a very peaceful society.
Peaceful society, and the places they chose to live were, suitable places to live, but also attractive places to live with nice scenery or aspects. So that sounds very idyllic, but obviously as the population grew, there's going to be competition over the food in that river or the food in that mountainside or whatever. So things did change, and again, you can lament the simplicity of the past, but things have changed. Our species has grown. There's competition. There's a little bit of pressure, like who owns that field, who owns that river. There's more fish in that river, and particularly at times of year when there's a lot of fish going through it. So I think it's hard, isn't it? Mesolithic people, they would move around.
What's Mesolithic are?
Sorry, Mesolithic would be people that wouldn't necessarily be fixed in a place.
Okay.
They'd travel. There'd be travelers going around after food. So they might go to this river at a certain time, then they might go, say in America, they might follow the bison. Here they might have...
And what about sleeping at night and stuff?
They'd have camps, mobile camps.
So they had camps and all.
Yeah,
what did that look like?
It's difficult.
Any idea? No?
Well, whether they be teepees or kind of yurts or different...
Because like nowadays people have tents. It's easy to carry a tent on your bag, but back then, I mean, how would they walked about with them?
Probably mostly. They may have horses, later on. They might have had pack animals.
Horses weren't in Ireland, were they?
Not. There's a debate about when exactly horses come in.
Okay.
They might have had oxen or cattle before that, but some of them would have walked. Some of them might have had favourite spots. Some of them might have erected a camp very quickly. It's interesting that there was a big Mesolithic site found on the River Bann in Derry. So I don't know what their shelters were like in that area, but they'd have to know where the best areas for hunting or fishing would be, or gathering seeds or nuts or whatever. So they'd have to know the landscape very well to be able to make those choices. And my limited understanding, I'm not an anthropologist or anything, but in a group, and there might be someone given the job of kind of telling them where to go next, where's the next best place for food. Whether that's a shaman or a kind of a tracker or an elder. And, some of these ideas are really interesting, where we think indigenous people are a little bit simple, but they're not, because there's other guys looking at the aspects of the French Revolution, and they're saying that these guys who first came up with democracy against monarchy, they were actually coming back with those ideas of collective thinking from Canada. The French guys were going over, taking furs and all the rest. That was pure monarchy. And they came back and they were speaking to tribal people, and the tribes would select a leader for a year, no more than a year, because after that they began to get a little bit corrupted. They just recognised it. Human nature, start doing favours for people so they twisted.
So actually, I've never heard that before. So I always felt that there was, I thought about it, that every tribe had a leader, but it kind of, once he was the leader, that was kind of, he was always leader until...
No.
So
this is now...
So somewhat democratic too.
Yeah, there was an election, and they were often saying that the men would have a council, and the male might be the leader.
And what time period is this?
I don't know, French Revolution, when was that?
Oh, that's not that long ago.
No.
1700s, no?
1780s or something, was it?
Okay.
Yeah. So... But when the male council would come together, they'd make a decision for the tribe, but it had to be passed by the female elders. And the female elders would kind of get it, I don't know, this is a recommendation. And if they said no, gone. So ideas of that nature were coming from North America, coming back into France, and had a big influence on the French Revolution. How to see the world socially, collectively.
So this was when there was kings, yeah? Tribes, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking on a different time, yeah.
So even in Ireland, there's, in recent years, and you see this from University College Cork, University College Dublin, University College Galway, where they talk about before 1100s, again before the Normans, they've identified what they call Onegi or Einegi, they're Irish terms, but they're places of gathering. And maybe 4 times a year, the people will come together. Now, they're probably festivals, like Celtic festivals at the, 1st of February, 1st of May, 1st of August, 1st of November. But these are regular sites, and 1,600 of them now have been identified. And it had festivals, and it have dance, and there might even be a bit of matchmaking or drinking or whatever. But they'd also have discussions about, right, what do we need? And one of the archaeologists, Patrick Gleeson, I think his name, Dr. Patrick Gleeson, he was saying it was more or less the lay people having a discussion. What do we want? What do we need? So it wasn't all about the chieftains. And I liked one of his lines where he said, Irish history is always about the big house and the chieftains. A small percentage of people. Because there isn't a lot of focus on maybe 80 or 90% of the people. The Onegi or the Enegi and these 1,600 assembly points. They'd have their own way of organising things. It could be about water pollution. It could be you're cutting down too many trees. It could be you're spilling dirty water upstream and you're coming into my drinking water. Things of that nature. I'm guessing here.
Yeah.
But they had these gatherings, and it's funny. Like I'm trying to think of the right word here. The academics, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but the kind of the specialists are focusing on this. But that aspect doesn't really come into the general conversation of who we were in our past, because there was collective thinking. We always feel, and all the stories all about the big house and the big leader and big this and big that. But, there was the normal people had their own ways as well.
Yes. You talk about the landscape being shaped as well, and the Round Tower origins, and the Brusselstown discovery. Newgrange, I know we mentioned that, but can you tell me a bit more about the Round Towers in Brusselstown?
Well, Brusselstown is really interesting. It's quite fresh. It's just there was a paper published maybe before Christmas. So they've archaeologists from Belfast have been working for a few years on a side of a mountain in Wicklow. It's looking West Wicklow, so we're kind of looking over Paula Fuca. And they were amazed to find remnants of small, simple homes, but 600 of them. And they date from about 1200 BC. But they're all kind of shaking their heads, and you can see some of the commentary, because they're saying, we thought towns and big collections were to do with the Vikings. We didn't know we had such a collective. So that's 600 homes. I'm not saying they're family homes, but they're individuals. Was it 2 people? Was it 3 people? I'm not sure there was as much marriage then. A lot of the tribes might have shared kids between grannies and aunties and uncles and all the rest.
But that's a lot of homes.
That is a lot.
Over what size?
Size, and again, it's pretty condensed, and I couldn't answer that question. It's there in the papers before Christmas.
And what period?
Like 1200 BC. So that's a long time ago. That's kind of the Bronze Age, coming near the end of the Bronze Age, depending what part of the world you live in. But the one question I want them to ask, and they haven't asked it yet, is what language they were speaking. Because we were told that the Celtic Gaelic language came in the Iron Age.
Which is?
Around, linguistically they're talking about 200 BC to 200 AD. And again, the Iron Age could have started, again, roughly, was it anywhere in Ireland from maybe 800 to 600 BC, was it?
So I thought you said the year 1200, but it's 800 BC is what you're saying, this settlement? Or am I getting mixed
1200 BC.
Oh, wow.
So it's a long time ago, yeah.
And do you think that they'll be able to discover what language? Will they find anything?
No, I don't think they'll discover what language, but they have to kind of start considering what words they spoke, because you don't have 600 units together without having the language. And those names, they must have had a name for that
Yeah.
river or that area. And I think over time they'll understand that Gaelic is much older than we're told, and it didn't come from the continent. This is my speculation. 'Cause they would have named parts of the mountains, the rivers, the hollows, even the trees where they lived, and they would have had names for things like a house. And they would, and
But so
that's a lot of people, and you can't come in with just a few people who are skilled iron oarsmen and change the whole language. So that population, the language should stick. In the 19th century, they basically said there was a big emphasis on invasion theory. So colonialists would like the idea that they'll go into an area, they'll bring wisdom and education and language, and because they're so intelligent, what they say will flourish and make everyone better. That was a 19th century view of the world. But that's not really accepted anymore. So I think we're learning so much, and there's all these items yet to be found in Ireland's history. And like even as regards the round towers, I don't think we really know what's going on with the round towers. I think most archaeologists would accept that we were told they were built to hide and safeguard Christian monks from the Vikings. But I think most archaeologists, or many archaeologists maybe, would be very sceptical of that. There's one, I was working on some hen harriers on a small project down in Scattery Island. It's in the mouth of the Shannon. And it's a smallish island. It's just off...
is this the round towers with the doors like a certain height up?
So yeah, most of them are a certain height up, so you have to get stairs up. And it's like a pencil, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a stone building with a cap on it. Some of them, one or two of them, have the doors at the ground floor. But the Vikings would have been coming into the River Shannon in the 8th century. They don't know when this round tower was built. They're presuming it was built around the time of the Vikings. But it's a small enough island, and most of the traffic from the Vikings is coming through the main channel. And this round tower is on the back of a small hummocky island and sticking up 120 foot. You're saying, if the Viking attack is your problem, why would you be putting a big red flag up so the ships would see you and come in and have a look? You wouldn't. You'd hide yourself. And the Royal Irish Academy in, when was it, the 19th century, had an essay competition. What were the round towers about? And there's a few guys put in essays, and they changed the closing date, and an essay came in and was saying it was all about the Vikings. But I think in time that'll that essay that came in after the closing date will be found to be kind of a story that suits the narrative, because I don't think we understand the round towers. And in time, there's ways now they can actually take out the mortar between the stones in round towers and get a carbon dated. Because I think when you burn in the kiln, when you're burning the silica or the lime for the mortar, you're setting off a date. So they could, if you go onto Wikipedia now, they say probably built between the 8th and the 12th century. That's not good enough now. You know, we need, and there's ways to find it out.
Mm-hmm. So then, I always thought that the Gaelic language was here for a long time.
Yeah.
So what is it that when is it that they said it kind of came? And from what I'm hearing from you is that it sounds like they're saying, or whoever's saying, it only came in the last, 800 years? No?
No, it'd be more than that.
They are saying it's coming in longer?
Yeah.
But you think it's been much, much longer before that?
Yeah.
How far back do you think it goes? And what is it that is generally said?
I think it could have evolved from the era of Newgrange.
Which is
5,000
years ago, yeah.
What they're saying is that it came in during the Iron Age. Well, most people, not everyone.
So that's when you had them all, they'd done all the Celtic
designs. Yeah,
but is there no language from them? They didn't write anything back then, no?
They might have done.
As in, like, no markings, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I wonder how we found. I think what was possibly happening, like the first manuscripts, the vellum, where it might have been hare skins or calf skins, they're writing letters on. They're turning up around, I think the 6th century, Columcille's era. Columcille was born in 521, and he was definitely writing. So there's poems about him from that era. But I think they're actually carving letters on wood, because that was an old form of carrying. And it wouldn't be long storybooks, but it might have a few messages on kind of branches to be peeled. And there was a guy in Wales who said the Welsh had that, and Yellow Morganway was his name, and he said that the Welsh had an alphabet before the Romans. So for 100 years, the Welsh thought he was great, and then they all turned on him and said, "Oh, he was a lunatic." But the poets were saying that long before him, that they had an alphabet. So there are linguists, as I said, who are saying that Gaelic is older than Greek and Latin, which would put it back into that time frame of Brusselstown. Like Homer was writing around 800 BC.
Sorry?
Homer, the guy who was writing a lot of the Greek stuff, the Iliad and all these.
I haven't heard of him, no.
Yeah. Well, he was kind of famous Greek poet and prose writer. But what some linguists are saying was that when he was around, that Gaelic was already in circulation. So we have a huge amount to learn about the old language that was here and the way people viewed the world. And that if we knew the language, we'd probably get a good idea of how they viewed the world.
Yeah, do you know what? I've said it so many times. I would love to learn the Irish language again. I want to say again, I'd love to try. It's just something I tried in school, and it was fucking hard. And I don't know if it was the way it's taught. I'm not the only one. Like everybody in Ireland goes to school. They're all taught Irish, but I mean, nobody's able to speak it. So, are they teaching it the wrong way, or why is it that nobody can learn our native language? We're probably the only nation that doesn't. Do you know every other country has their French or whatever, German, but they'll go to school and learn English.
Yeah,
here
it's hard. There's probably some of the. It was looked down upon by many aspects of society. If you had Irish, well, you weren't going to get a job in Britain or America, so why bother? People going over to Staten Island, if they had Irish, they weren't able to deal maybe with the paperwork. If you're going to work in Britain, whether you're working in the tunnels or working in construction, you needed English, so English was seen as a better tool economically. I went to an all-Irish school. A lot of my friends at home, outside of school, and playing soccer or Gaelic, they wouldn't have Irish. They'd be saying the same thing. "Oh, I wish I had Irish, but I don't have Irish," and they're not really interested, and their teacher said this and their teacher said that. So I don't think there's any simple answer to that. There's probably a perception on it. I think there is a bit of a revival going on now, and I think if you were even learning learning Irish in primary school, I think it gets difficult in secondary school. So when I was growing up, it was very unhip in Dublin to speak Irish. I remember playing hurling games and football games, and we were the only, at that time, the leagues we were playing in, we were the only all-Irish school. And it'd be good banter, but all the slagging would be, you mahogany gas pipe, you culture, this, that, and the other. And that's all you were getting from the opposition during the game, under 14, under 16, or whatever, under 18. It was all crack, but there was meaning behind it. What the fuck are they doing learning Irish? That's a waste.
Mm-hmm.
But that's changed now. To make it easy again, I don't know. I wouldn't diss English either. I think... and
I'm not either. Yeah. I'm just...
But I'll continue, Ryan. I think English has grown out of Irish. Like the one thing, this is contrary. The Oxford Dictionary, there was a guy up in Edinburgh in the 19th century, and he's looking at English words and he says, "Oh, that's come from French, that's come from German. The French would be the Normans, the Germans would be the Anglo-Saxons. That's come from Greek, that's come from Rome." I'm looking at some words now and saying, Jesus, that's old British. I'm not going to use the word Irish, but old Britannic, old Gaelic in Britain.
But when you say that, when you say Britannic, I think people associate Britain as just because Ireland is Brittany, isn't it?
Well, there's different words for it. No? Well, they say Ireland would say, and the Scots would have Gaelic, and Britannic would be what was spoken in England and Wales and Brittany. They'd be different types of Celtic languages. But it's very curious because there is one or two maps kicking about, and I can't find out where the originals are. But there was a geographer in Egypt about 150 AD, and he did a map of Ireland. It's a simple map, but it's one of the first maps that still are going about. And I'm not sure if the original's still there, but people have copied it. And across Ireland in 150 AD, he has the word Brit, Annika. Then up there he has Ibernia, and down Southern Ireland he has Insula. And I'm just looking at that word Britannica written on Ireland, and I'm saying, holy cow, is there any chance that Britannica went to the east? So, as an amateur, you go Googling, and I'm asking, when was Britannica the word first used? And they say, oh, the 1600s, 1700s, the Encyclopedia Britannica. What about this book here, 150 AD? He's putting the word Britannica there. And I'm beginning to think that it's talking about a kind of a feather crown, indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
Aini would be birds, and cat would be were, and Brit would be kind of a splay. So it would be, I kind of laughed to myself. It would be funny if the word Britannica actually meant the kind of the feather splay of indigenous people. That might change a few people. It's just...
Is this something that you're kind of...
I'm just wondering. I don't think I'll do it, but I think in time as we start to learn, and I say going back to English words, I think they're far more connected, whether it's the Britannic of those or Gaelic, and there's this big effort. No, we don't want to be there. We don't want to be with indigenous people. There's a Gaelic word I think we've possibly overlooked, and I'll say this out of devilment as much as anything else. Fua Dáil. Fua would be hatred, and Dáil would be sharing. And I think we know that word from the continent. Feudal. Fua Dáil, I hate sharing. It's me. So, the Norman kings who came here were feudal. They didn't like the idea of sharing. Fua, hatred. Dáil, our Dáil up in Dublin. The concept behind it is sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So the hatred of sharing is, in my Gaelic mind, with a smile and a wink, means feudal. There's that pyramid approach that the special people in this world, 1%, let's own as much money as possible. And then there's a different worldview, which is far more indigenous. Yeah, we're all part of the oneness, and we should be sharing and helping each other. We don't have to be the same. You have to stand up to bullies and that. We're not going to hold hands with everyone, because we're always going to meet bad people. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that there's a concept that we've lost. And if you are hatred of sharing, you have to instill in the little people that I'm the boss, I'm the best. I'll take most. I'll give you little bits and be happy. So, there's words there that they could be pretty powerful if they're fully explored.
Mm-hmm. You seem like you have a lot of different ideas and theories about things. What else have you? I'd love to hear more.
No,
I find it very interesting.
No, it's funny when you go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And, I'm not looking for anything, but I'm curious. And I
think
questions.
It's good. I mean, should we believe everything we hear?
No,
I mean,
and even
I'm not the kind of person that does. I mean. You just don't know what's true, what's not,
Yeah. And even like what I said, and a lot of it I said is speculation. People shouldn't just click on and say, oh, he's telling the truth. Don't be naive. Don't look. I'm telling my version of truth. I've said some of its opinion, but I'm hinting to you, maybe you go and inquire yourself. Like, I think the Aran Islands and Errigal Mountain are very important in Irish history. I really believe that.
Why?
I think
not just like Donegal history, but Irish history.
Yeah. I think it's a long story. That's a personal belief, a very strong belief. But I think
to hear a shortened version.
If people went and took a look down, I think there's markings in the landscape that can only be seen from above. This is going to sound a bit weird. Now, do people have astral dreams? Could they go up in a tethered balloon? I don't know. But you've seen. Or people can Google it now because they mightn't have heard this word before. In Peru, there's things called the Nazca lines. And they're lines in the landscape, and they only make sense if they're seen from above. And it's a lovely novelty, and it's well recognized. I can't explain it. But when we were putting satellite tags on golden eagles, you were following the golden eagle around the Derry Mountains initially. And when we started off in 2005, you wouldn't believe this, but it's a fact. I've got screenshots of it. So you get a pinpoint, a grid location of where the golden eagle was roosting that night. And at that time, from 2005 to about 2016, Derry Mountains were the only place in Europe covered in snow. They hadn't field are covered in cloud. They hadn't put on the slices to show the landscape. They just never got around to it. You're saying, "Feck," it was only you couldn't really see the landscape. But in 2016, that changed, and they filled in all the cells. So all of Donegal now, Bing, Google, whatever system you want, you can look down on the landscape. And I was doing that a lot, probably more than other people because I was following golden eagles.
Like, and when you're saying down, do you mean like Google Maps?
Yeah, you're on a computer and you're looking down, but it's an aerial satellite view. So in terms, I'd have the map next to me. I used to use a map all the time. Where's that eagle going to nest? Where's it roosting? That might be good for food. Where's the nearest place to get there in terms of walking? You'd be using maps all the time. Then it all came onto the computer. Happy days. But you'd be looking down, like looking down on a map, and you'd see things. And I think there's some lake shapes that have been cut out by human hands. It makes sense if you're above. You'll not see it along the plain. But if you get above, so I think Errigal is important if you look down on it. I think the Aran Islands is important if you look down on it. And I think in time, people would say, "That's mad, what do you mean?" I said, well, maybe people were able to go up in a balloon using tree sap, whether it's a skin or
so
a sheet.
you're saying there's the potential that people had these kind of balloons. They were they made these balloons and were able to go up.
Yeah.
And what was the purpose?
Maybe just to look down.
And what would they gain from that?
Well, they could see in a distance, in theory. There's some talk of it over in Japan that they were shooting arrows out of it.
Arrows out of
the balloon, or they elevated an enemy. They're in a higher position.
Right.
Yeah. And they could see the landscape. Maybe they could design something. I'm not sure. I live in ignorance.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of people who read the Bible and believe in angels. There's other people looking at Sumerians and they believe in aliens. I don't believe in aliens. I'll pass on angels, I don't know. But I'm just wondering, with the Nazca lines as an example, there are lines in the landscape in Peru. And
what were what's the lines? What was the benefit of them?
All different shapes. That there's hummingbirds, there's monkeys.
But I mean, what was the purpose of them? Sorry, I'm trying to picture it here. If I'm standing on a hilltop, am I looking down? Am I seeing straight lines or what? Or
yeah, I'm not. I wonder, can you see them from a hilltop? I don't know. It's a big tourist.
Well, you're saying more of an elevated height, with a balloon potentially.
Yeah. And one guy tried it, but there's tourists who go there and they have to get in a small biplane, to look down on the landscape. So what was the reason? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. This is over in. You'll find it pretty easy. Nazca, Nazca, Nazca lines in Peru.
Okay, but so if they built the balloon, say, in Donegal, right, how would they have built the balloon? And I'm still not understanding the purpose. You're saying maybe to shoot an enemy?
No, I'm saying that happened in Japan.
Okay, Japan, but in Donegal, say,
I think
Ireland,
maybe just to look at the landscape, or we'll see. I think there's just an inquiry now, but I think if you were to make a balloon, we hear a lot about case and baskets, and in Irish myth there is talk of a spare van, a sky lady. Like a lot of countries in the world talk about sky beings. And we were saying that's myth. Maybe it was myth. Maybe one or two, say a small percentage, over 10,000 years, did 2 or 3 really intelligent people come together, and if there's no doubt they could make the basket. I think everyone will recognise that.
Yeah.
They could make the ropes. Everyone understands that. Were they able to do really tight stitching of skins, seal skins, bear skins? Were they able to sew materials, linen, flax, nettle? You can use nettle wires. Hemp would have been a big one for growing. And they could have stitched them together. Probably leaky. They probably wouldn't go too far. Then how do you make the balloon lift? You need heat.
Yes.
Yeah, heat, right? So what about steam? Steam, and you might get 500 yards. You might get 200 yards, you might fall on your belly. They could use tree sap. They could use heated stones.
So how would the tree sap work?
It would be fuel. Tree sap's
pretty... They'd light it up, yeah. So they'd have a small thing to light.
Of a container, and they'd heat it.
Do they need a steel container then of sorts? Maybe stone?
Bone,
okay.
Yeah. So did they just heat up?
But they'd need a lot though, wouldn't they?
They would.
They'd need,
and they'd use up a lot.
Yeah. So it'd have to be fairly big, like.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm not going to say like the modern day hot air balloons,
No. But if you think about the concept of it,
yeah,
hot air balloons is gas. They don't really use steam. I'm
it's gas. It's not heat, no.
It is heat. Yeah,
the air's
flame.
hot. Like it's lighter,
air.
makes it go up. Yep.
The air goes up, and I think people who are looking at nature, have you ever seen a golden eagle soar, spiral? It won't flap. You ever see that?
I know. I have seen it on TV, yet not in person.
Yeah. So that's hot air, thermals going up. The bird sits on it. It doesn't have to flap. You see smoke, hot air going up. So I think people knew that hot air went up.
Mm-hmm.
That's not rocket science, is it? They might have seen a bubble. Sometimes at the edge of the seashore, a bit of foam, splash, and the bubble will lift up. I think over time they could have learned that hot air goes higher. So I think it's possible. You won't find any of that stuff because it's fairly organic. And the fuel, they were collecting tree resin for waterproofing, houses and weapons and boats, pitch and boat skins and that. They were sometimes using resin maybe to cover a wound, almost like a membrane or plaster. They were drinking resin, methanol, pretty strong stuff. It's recorded where
when you say methanol, this isn't the people stuff like
this is like raw alcohol.
Yeah,
it'd be like putching, the version of putching. Yeah. So the indigenous people occasionally, I don't know how they dilute it. I've never done it, but like the Russians would have had birch sap, methanol. Be like methylated spirits. It would knock you. It would probably kill you if you didn't do it correctly. But that is pure fuel, and it's curious, as I said. I've gone out on a limb there, but I've said it to some people. What would happen if people had balloons in the past and we didn't know about it? And they laugh at me and say, "Sure, that would change everything." If a person from Ireland was able to go to Britain in a balloon 5,000 years ago, I'm just saying it. I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm saying if, but it's impossible. Well, I'm just saying if they'd have the ability. Was it possible? People have spoken about special people in the past that coming in the clouds. That's a pretty common thing now in myth, and you'll see it in the Bible. You'll see it in Greek philosophy, Greek myth. You'll see it in Sumerian myth about the sky people. Now, are all these people wrong? Maybe they were wrong, but is it possible that a small percentage of people had a limited amount of balloon transport, balloon travel? It's curious, and I don't know the answer. But
where did you hear about this, or the concept or theory, or is it just?
It's just worked on over time. I've never read about it anyway.
Yeah,
I've never read it. I've never heard about it from anyone. But
is it like stories and stuff that you've?
It's words and wondering how people associated with cranes moved around. There's a lot of talk in Irish myth about chariots. We're told the chariots, 2 wheels, and they're racing around the countryside. And I'm just wondering whether chariot was another word for balloon movement. No, just in terms of Ireland in particular, there's a lady in myth, the spare van. And she's very powerful, very compassionate, and it's well known. And she seems to be connected with a lot of different energies and aspects of our past. And there's some really interesting words like iris in Gaelic. You find this a modern word now, is faith, belief, and creed. But if you go to Greek, and the Greek goddess Iris was connected with the rainbow. She was a messenger, a kind of deliverer of peace. She was a communicator with, they'd use the word God, but it depends what is God, that's another story. I sometimes think God is just creation. In Gaelic you'll have a phrase, even in modern Irish, McDaid bio, so son of the living God. But I think Day is actually not a God. The males have kind of turned all these special words into people, persons, so they're called about personified gods. Indigenous people wouldn't see it like that. They'd see energies or forces or spirits or whatever. But Irish is interesting because in modern Irish, again, open a book. It's not a word I would have been told at school because kind of on the margins, but it is there. Irish means a belief or a creed, or even a faith. And depending how you view the word faith, is faith just religion? I wouldn't think so. I think all people across the world have faith in whatever they believe themselves. Aborigines have faith. It's nothing to do with formal religion. And it's just people of faith. You have to kind of believe in yourself. We all know individuals and heroes in our own history or people we look up to. And what we probably admire about them most is that they believed in themselves, whether it was for a cause or for a sports team or for a language or for a country or a medical profession or whatever. You know, it's just that strength and character and overcoming all the obstacles that are in front of you. And I just think that, unfortunately, once we started to push the females to the edge, it almost comes automatically that then aggression and ego and pride lifts up a little bit. We've lost the balance. And I think that people were very afraid of the feminine. It's interesting because I think, was it the last Pope or the current Pope has accepted that Mary Magdalene in the Bible was a very good person. There was a Pope in the 6th century who said Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, which is, in my mind, really, even reading the story, whether you believe it or not, in the Bible, it's just wrong. He was just downgrading someone who was very close to Jesus. And we use the word Jesus, that's an English word, obviously. In Gaelic, we have the word Isa. And I think it's a kind of, the I stands for spirit, the O stands for time. Sa is a word for great, so it's great spirit of time. That's very different from a person. That's almost an indigenous view of the world. Great spirit of time. I think you could go to North America, South America, Africa. You go up to Siberian people, you could go to Aborigines, and a lot of them would have different words saying the same thing. Great spirit of time. And I think that's a miracle. I think the fact that every time one of our generation is born, whether you have nephews or nieces or children, or you know about your parents, or you see young people of your friends, the memory of the water cells is passed down. And I said in that book, Core Scale, and I think it's one of the nicer sentences I think I wrote. If someone was to sit on a couch one day and say, okay, where am I from? Sit on the couch, turn off all the lights, get rid of every electronic device in the room, and sit and say, right, I know my ma, my dad, I know my grannies, and go back. And, you know, there's a lot of programs now, aren't they, where are my roots, and they take celebrities and see where they went, going through their genealogies. But don't stop 200 years ago. Don't stop 300 years ago. This process has always been going on. And if you really want to think about it now, it is a bit of a head wreck. That cell memory, water cell memory, goes back before we were human. It goes whatever type of mammal we were before that. Before mammals were invented. Before animals came onto the land, we were in the sea. And that's, you know, that memory, that kind of spark, we might call it a chip. Chip. There's a water, a brainy chip inside our water that allows us to live on from generation to generation. And it's that aspect of knowing that we are at the root. And if you look at indigenous people, especially, there's a lot of serious female leaders now of a re-energizing of indigenous people. And they'll often have a tree as a symbol, tree of life. You hear that in the Adam and Eve story, the good tree and the bad tree. It's an indigenous story. And then they might have a sky, or they might have a river. But if you think about it, the water in the river and the lakes and the sea does evaporate, and it creates that watery foam. And I'd love, if I was a poet, I'd love to write a poem about the cloud, because the cloud is living. I'm not a scientist, as I said before. We could ask a scientist. But when the atmosphere was formed, it would have been kind of thin. Initially, the earth was very hot and all the rest, but after a time, hydrogen is the atmosphere, and then it needs, for water, you need oxygen. But for that oxygen to get in, and mixed with hydrogen, H2O. So you need hydrogen. Is it 2 parts of hydrogen and oxygen?
I'm not sure now.
Yeah, H2O.
I know H2O, yeah.
So, but where's the oxygen coming? The oxygen is coming from sea plankton and trees breathing out. So the cloud's getting thicker and thicker. So we're dependent on this air vessel, and we're one of the few planets in our, I think the only planet in our galaxy with a cloud, a water room, water wrap. Use whichever term you're comfortable with. A water blanket might be a nice term, but that has actually come from life itself. So that, in my mind, is really beautiful. We're all part of life. That's going to the cloud, you know. That's come from the cloud, and it's just it makes you kind of shake a little bit if you think about it that way. Now, you have to get up in the morning and be at work at X time. You have to look at, is the bill paid, or is there a hole in my shoe? Do I need a new pair? We all understand that, but just at time, remember that you're part of life, and life often finds a way. And then when you find people are sick or elderly, you have to be compassionate to them. And I don't think anyone can explain why people get sick, why people die through tragic incidents. And, you can often think about getting that dreadful phone call or whatever. We don't quite understand it, but it is as if there's something bigger than we're willing to admit. But whatever that unseen thing is, it's behind us all. That's 8 billion people. And it's not your version of that. It's not your language of that. It's not your skin color of that. It's not your economic perspective of that. We are water cells. If you look at it the wrong way, and maybe it's not the right thing to teach children because they might feel very small. Oh, I'm just another water cell. But they are glorious. We spoke earlier on about the mixing. Every mixing becomes a uniqueness, but that uniqueness is really precious to the oneness.
Mm-hmm.
So I think once and when, and I do believe it'll happen, once and when we start looking at old Irish words, 2 letters, Irish words, and how they start to join together, we'll have a much better idea of what those people felt it was to being. Because I was out in Glenveagh, and they're quite interested in Glenveagh about the Gaelic aspect of the national park, Glenveagh. They're saying, what does Glenveagh mean? In Gaelic, that's the word for glitchbit. And some people say, oh, it's the Glen of the Birch. And some people say it's the Glen of Life. But I'm a firm believer in these little words. So I look at BE because there's different spellings, but BE is in all of them. And BE in Old Irish and Modern Irish means being and existence and life itself. So I think Glenveagh, the people who lived there, we use the word fado, long ago, had this concept that we are part of this kind of mystery or miracle or blessing of life. And Banathe is a word in Gaelic for blessed. And there's talk in Greece a long time ago about the Blessed Isles. Because somehow the map makers knew that the Blessed Isles was the first to start thinking the world was round. And she invented, or she was the marker of 1 degree longitude. So if the world's a circle, like an orange, what do you call those chocolate oranges? All the segments.
Terry's.
There you go. And that's what we are in the map. But the Blessed Isles, this blessed lady, Ilan Banathe in my mind, which is a lady with the feathers, she was the one who said, wow, we're this island. Because we all talk about how different we are, but I think it'd be really useful if in school we discussed, even occasionally, what are all the things we share? We share a single cloud. It's a round cloud, it's water. Use whatever, water blanket, water mother, water womb. We all come from evolution. You have to accept that. Like some people say, God flicked the switch and humans came, and we're not connected to the millipedes and the butterflies and the ladybirds, but we are. We all have the same body holes. That gets, you can imagine that.
The same body
holes, orifices,
holes.
openings.
Yes.
You've got your eyes, ears, nose, mouth, nipples, navel, genitals, and bottom, anus. If you didn't have them, but they're the kind of a gateway for our shell of water to communicate and live from and be active with this wider living thing. Like even only recently I was asked the computer why the males have nipples. And I only learned them, I'm in my 50s, and I'm only learning this now, and I feel like a bit thick. Because when we're in the womb in the early stages, in the very early stages, we could turn out to be a female or a male. And then the Y chromosome kicks in and we become both. But again, that shows that life has formed us, and it is, I feel, it's a miracle. I can't explain it, but but going back to what joins us again, going back in my mind, and it's only a guess. The vowels of the people who were trying to form languages, they were thinking that the spirit, say the life force, say the unseen, whatever word you want, the thing we can't quite figure out, that energy that keeps life going, is I. Time, you could use the words like circles or orbits. That's what the O represents, is O. And then the V, we do in Irish now we do a U, it's more curvy, but in the past when they're carving on wood, it would have been a V, is water. And the A would be for breath or air. And like, without air, we won't last very long. Without water, we won't last very long. Without time, we won't last very long. Without energy, we won't last very long. But if we're talking about time, it's kind of 3 times, physically, there's 3 times, because the earth is spinning we can't see it, but we're going about 67,000 kilometers an hour. We don't feel it. The moon is wrapping around us all the time. And for Ireland, I think the early people especially would have lived on the coast. So the moon, I don't know how long it took them to figure it out, but over time they would have seen the tide was connected to the moon. High tide, low tide, ebb tide, neap tide. And then they would have connected the tides to the female cycle. And all of us, male and female, are all born from the female cycle. And then there's obviously, and we spoke about the Mesolithic people who are following fish and the seasons, whether it was trees or nuts or whatever they were gathering. That's the seasonal, that's the big, big cycle, the yearly cycle of this planet hurtling through the cosmos. Again, we're not aware of it. This is a rock that's kind of breaking every speed limit going. And we're going around the light. So there's 3 circles. We're not aware of that. We take it for granted. But we're one of the only rocks in the galaxy with that cloud wrap, which gives us life. And I think that should be the basis of any creed, any faith. And I have to say, and I was pretty impressed now, the last Pope who passed away, Pope Francis, he did say he felt that all religions were going back to the same God. I think that was a pretty brave thing for him to say, and I've seen some of the stuff in America saying, oh, he's the Antichrist, he doesn't. But if you're in an institution and you've been telling people for hundreds of years, this is the truth, follow us. But every institution we know, every business we know, is always trying to say they're the best. And maybe if we all were a little bit more honest and say, we've all made mistakes. I wonder where the similarities are, the commonness are, the common aspects. And I think if we spoke about us humans being life, that'd be a really interesting place to be. And I'd reassure people that you don't have to wear pretty shoes. You don't have to have the best car to be life. You're life. Let's stick with that and then make it grow in the way you want it, not the way telly's telling you to live life, not the way the pop star's telling you to live life. So I think there's a lot to be learned from indigenous wisdom. And there was a kind of a poshness. There's always a poshness, isn't there? When people get advanced and they're doing better and, I'm smarter than you, follow me, I'm wiser than you. There's not a simplicity, and I think that best leaders were always those who could communicate with. I'm going to use the word simple here, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean simple. People who are happy with their own pace of life, or what they were doing, whether it was an important job or a difficult job, and just a simple view of life. And that, when I used to go over to the Aran Islands, people say, the Aran Islanders, there's a simple way of life. And I've seen people over there, and I often said to myself, even in my teens, Christ, they've got it cracked. They're just happy out, doing the simple things.
Yeah.
They don't get too upset about what's going on in the far distant corner of America or whatever. So there is a beauty in simplicity and acceptance, and sometimes it's heavily degraded, kind of looked down upon. I'm sure you've often met people.
There's so much noise in the world today. You see,
Yeah,
it's
the noise,
you know,
the
people
noise.
feel like they're missing out.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be very stoic.
Yeah.
You know,
And and I think, you know, maybe for an audience, and it's very important not to say, "Oh, stay at home. Don't go out and have the mad night's crack. Don't go out and go for the banter and have a bit of excitement and be a bit exotic and go somewhere exotic." I'm not saying that, but just in the long term, you don't have to kind of beat everybody at everything else. Just kind of look at your own simplicity and how important you are. And maybe at times myself, I would have felt, no one cares. But you have to get over that and say, people do care. And you mightn't see them, they mightn't say it to you. Some people will say it. I think females are better at saying it to you than males. My dad would have had a great time for me. He mightn't have often said, I loved you. Whereas my ma would have been very different, more open, you know. So we're never going to be the same. I don't think every male should try and be feminine. I don't think every female needs to be masculine. Some females are very strong individuals. That's not necessarily masculine.
I agree. Yeah. Lorcan, come here. It's been really, really, really insightful, and a pleasure having you today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, great.
It's been good.
Well, hopefully there's a few grains of truth in there.
I mean, it's definitely, I say, mind opening anyway. You know,
Yeah.
it's something I really enjoy. It's just hearing different perspectives. You know, also digging into the past as well, the land. You know, it's something that I'm very curious about.
I think we're coming to a stage now when people are interested in their. It's a lot of individuals outside maybe institutions who are tied to financial sponsorship and all the rest, and there's other aspects involved. But there's so many clues in the landscape and in the language, and I think we're all going to start finding bits. And, you know, we could learn about Ireland from South America. We could learn about Ireland from the Aborigines. Something really curious during the COVID outbreak, I remember seeing a little video clip where some Aborigine leaders were in a group and they were looking for support because they felt they were being mistreated by the Australians, and they said in the clip they're looking to their brothers in Scotland and Ireland. And I just, that must be a cultural memory somewhere. It wasn't a throwaway remark. They felt they had kind of spiritual brothers in Scotland and Ireland, and I'd love to know where that story came from. But there's so many stories like that. And likewise, I think Ireland as an island has had huge amounts of influence from places across the world that we're not aware of at this moment in time, but we will become aware of.
Yes. I think the longer we go in time, the more we discover it.
Yeah.
Lorcan, thank you.
Right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.